Hello there everybody, and welcome to the second episode of my tutorial series for Desynced. I've taken the liberty between this and the last episode to fast forward the research of the power technology, because this is what we're going to work with today. We're going to set up our own power production. I'm going to show you a couple of things, how to build your own blueprints so you can mass produce buildings in a way that you need less of micromanagement to do so. And what will happen in between, we'll see about that. So, first things first, let's talk about the things that we have unlocked here. So I've unlocked the solar cell, which is a small component which will produce power during daytime, and we have batteries and capacitors to store the power that is being generated during daytime, so we can have power at night too. So the principle here is quite simple. We're going to build up new buildings that have solar cells, and we're going to bring in the capacitors as well, because these are storing power, but the clue about them is that they are internal components. And when we have a look at the buildings here, we have one slot for a small component and two internal sockets. That means our solar power plants will be power storage buildings at the same time. We can now also build small batteries, which are basically just like capacitors, just much better. They store more power, they have better recharging and draining rate, so they can give off more power per second as well. Ideally, we will work with all three of these components, and that's what we're going to do today. So I have already set up the research towards basic robotics, so I think this will be something we will be working with today as well. So it's going to be quite an exciting one. I'll be setting up now some medium-sized buildings for us that we're going to use as our crafting halls, because I want to have as much capacity as possible, and this is way to go. We have by now automated the production of all the basic materials that we require, which means we are pretty steady on our output in this regard. The only thing that we don't have a steady income of is the resources, but that's something we'll be working on in a hot minute as well. So we're going to be outsourcing these assemblers now into the buildings here by dragging and dropping them on top of these. There we go. And now we can start producing some. We're going to go and produce ourselves some solar cells. Let's say 2 of them. And the real fun part here is that these buildings here have a lot of free sockets. So basically you could fill these also with capacitors if you'd like to have a lot of energy storage in your entire base. These extra slots can and should be used in some way or another. What's really important though to note is that if you want to produce buildings like the solar cells and whatnot, you need a building that has enough slots. If there are not enough slots in the building, stuff will not get produced at all. I had to learn that the hard way. Now then, so the first solar cell is being produced, and well, the base building is a tad bit on the slow side because we don't have too many resources available. That's why we are rushing the solar power so much. Here we go. I'm setting up the first of these solar power cells into the buildings that are available currently, because this way I don't need to build new buildings. And while new buildings are at the later stages of the game really no problem to set up, right now, well, our resources are really limited, and you really feel that. Therefore, we're going to put those solar cells wherever they fit, which is currently in our little medium building thingies there. We are also going to build ourselves some extra capacitors. So let's get ourselves 4 of these. And by doing this, we have already got ourselves a nice little upgrade for our power production, which is really necessary at that point. These 2 producers here, we will use them henceforth for a lot of little things that will get produced in the time being. But one of the biggest things that we are going to work towards to now is the expansion of our bigger enterprises, so to say. Because right now as you see, things are working out rather slowly. So I'm going to fast forward here this a little bit until we have produced a couple of things and the next steps are a little bit more entertaining. And that's been what I've been waiting for. So we have now basic robotics unlocked. This gives us a new building component, the robotics assembler, which is the next thing that we desperately require. This little thingy will build us new robots, the so-called dashbots. But for these, we will also require energized plates, which can be only made at the robotics assembler. Well, you see where that's getting towards to. That's why I love these extra building halls that I have set up here. Because, you know, whenever you need some custom order for certain materials or building components, it's really helpful to have these guys around that can take a custom order. If you need some more reinforced plate, some more metal bar or whatever, these guys are really, really good during the early game. I want to stress out once more that at the current phase that we're in, it does not really pay off in any way for us to stress ourselves too hard towards how would I call it, a too big base, because right now we wouldn't be able to sustain that. This is the biggest problem that we got. We are going to research basic signals in between, because this will unlock some really, really useful things over the course of the time. Among other things, we get the signal reader, the portable radar, and most importantly, at the end of this research path lies repair technology, which is absolutely a must-have. So there we go. We should have that. Here we go. The robotics assembler is done. We are going to put that baby here back into the command center because I really think that one research project is enough for us. So the energized plate, we're only going to produce ourselves one because we require only one for the first dashbot. We're going to expand our robotic army now, while we're now looking for things how we could automate our buildings a little bit more. Like I said, blueprints are what are the next thing that I want to go for now. So first off, I want to have a building that can store energy for me, you know? I don't want to have these capacitors in every building. You can, of course, but I'm personally much more of a big fan for a dedicated building. So we're going to use one of those small buildings that feature 2 slots for small components. They have a low storage, but we really don't mind. So the power storage buildings, we're going to put them somewhere, well, not too far away from the base, because we have to guard that, but they shouldn't be around my production lines, because, you know, I don't want to interfere with that. Buildings cannot be moved after they have been set up, therefore, choose wisely, you know. Alright, basic signals has been researched. For now, we'll leave it like that. So, finally, the first better robot will be produced. We're going to build ourselves one, and then we're going to repeat the process. In the meantime, I want to get myself hands on another robotic assembler. We should have the necessary resource for that, so we can boost up our output accordingly. Power production right now is not where we will need it. Solar power has the big downside of being unavailable during night. That means effectively you only have, well, I don't know how the difference between day and night here is percentile, but as you see, the day is much longer than the night. So all in all, well, I would say it's something around 70% efficiency or something like that. It's not the end of the world, it ain't horrible or anything, but it's something you should take into account. So here's the first friend of the dashbot, and I'm going to put this guy directly into the logistics duty because we are so swamped in that department. But luckily I have now 2 robotics, and this is where you can set up things a little bit better. So now on to the battery building. We're going to set up 2 batteries, 2 small batteries. and 2 capacitors because, you know, we got the slots, so we might as well fill them with something useful, don't we? I'm gonna build another energized plate while I'm at it, because these, well, before we know it, they will be the new standard material, but, you know, we gotta be getting there. At this point, the next big step that you are going to head towards to is the increase of new mining robots, because these are, we need more of these right now. As you see, crystal production is, well, it barely suffices. What you can always do during the early phases of the game is to go for extra scattered resources. It is a real helpful thing early on because there's more the scattered resources are really easy to pick up, and it'll help you to give you that little bit of a kickstart. Really like to do this once in a while. There we go. So once the components are ready, we're going to put one battery in here. These guys are still waiting for their production. Yeah, early game is kind of slow. You gotta deal with it, you know. And now we're going to go for our next dashboard. There we go. As soon as we have established a few of these guys, things will get a lot easier. Because right now, most of my slowness is due to the overburdened logistics network here. There's just too many carrying jobs that need to get done, and my current fleet of robots is just not up to the task. Therefore, we got some problems. I kept this guy now on permanent production of energized plates. I really recommend you to do this as soon as you can afford. Right now we cannot really afford, so I'm rather printing some more dashboards. So I'm putting this guy into the logistics network once more, but he's the last one of his kind. So we're going to build 2 more of these guys, and now I'm using the rally point. So you hold the left mouse button down, and you can drag and drop, and this is how you can select where the new troops will be rallied at. If you're into real-time strategy games, you probably know all the drill already. So we're going to put the capacitors in there, and now, I mean, it's not too much of a super strenuous task to do this every time, but you can now take this building as a blueprint and replicate it by just pressing, or first you select the building you want to copy, then you press L for library, and then you will find the building that you're currently using here on the unnamed building, and this is what we got. And then you press save current selection, then you give it a nice and fancy name. No longer unnamed building, we call it small battery house, something like that. And then you got this saved in your blueprint library. Now, when you press next time B, you go into library, you have this one now available, small battery house. When you set it up, it will only get built as soon as you have all of the components. So the whole building will only be fetched up as soon as you have the batteries and the capacitors. Otherwise, it will stay a blueprint forever. So we're going to set up ourselves a couple of batteries and a couple of capacitors on top of that. And then we should get ourselves more power production. Right now, I just want to establish a proper buffer, you know. It's very important to have a battery where you can store all that stuff. In the meantime, our dashbots got finished. And as you see here, these guys here cannot produce any robot gear. And oh yeah, I deeply despise that beginning phase. We're going to build 2 mining modules now because, you know, we want extra miners. I finally want to do something against the crystal scarcity. And at this point, it really pays off to replace your workers with dashbots. And I'm going to show you how. By the way, that blueprint system works with everything. You can also use that with your robots. If you select the robot, press L, you can save the blueprint there, and then these things here will be available in the building options. So basically every configuration of a building that you derive will or can be saved as a ready-made building, which is really cool because that means this way you can create your own library of templates. Also, you can create extra folders for your library, so you can also make sure that they, how to call it, get sorted out correctly, and you can copy and import that stuff also into the clipboard. I haven't experimented around with that yet, but we will do so over the course of the series when the buildings get a little bit more sophisticated and challenging. Good. So, really important thing, again, like I did it with the other guys, the new mining bots need to be disconnected from the deliver and request item job. I press C and V to copy those settings onto Sky 2. So, and now we connect them into the logistics network, let them mine their gemstones. That's one really, really big step forward for us. So we really need those crystal chunks because they are now the backbone of our expansion. We won't be getting anywhere without these guys in the long course of events. So the next big step forward is for your own base, something you can select for yourself. Either you go for a solar cell power supply, which can be fulfilled right now, or you go for the research of expanded power, where you unlock wind turbines. Wind turbines offer permanent power generation, they don't take a break during nighttime, and they even gain extra power when they are located on higher ground. Pretty good stuff. The big downside there is they require wires, and wires can only be built when you have the robotics production technology, and for that we require silicon. And silicon is something, well, we don't have that yet, but we'll be getting there soon, very, very soon. Especially since we now have the ability to get ourselves the expansionary tools that we require. So, here's what we're going to do. I will, for now, get myself a permanent production of the energized plates, so we can bunker up that stuff. We are going to set up something neat here. Let's see. Oh, we don't have that tech yet. So we need the behaviors tech next to unlock shared storages. And we're going to get ourselves storage buildings down here. If you hold down shift while building a building, by the way, you keep it on cursor. Left shift, that is. Good. So we're going to put these buildings now on endless production of solar cells and capacitors, because that's just the buildings of the future for us. We will be straining our crystal production with that a tad bit, but that's okay. We can handle some stress. So next step, I'm going to look for my logistics scout and disconnect them from the logistics network as a first thing. Then we're going to equip this bad boy with a small turret so he can fend off enemies. And then I am ordering myself another small building for later purposes. I'm going to leave my base as it is for now, and we are going to go on a bit of a fetch quest now. So you see, there's everywhere these wide sandy pillars. This is raw silicon, so to say. It's silica sand. And this stuff can be refined into silicon. You can mine silica sand from the plateaus, but this is where the enemies are actually living at. And the moment you start mining these things, you get the attention of the natives. And I can only say that much. You don't want the attention of the natives unless you have your guns ready. And collecting these little sand piles here is a nice thing to keep yourself occupied while you're waiting for several things to get done. because at the very moment you still have to wait for the production of many, many things. And pilfering resources on the map is one of my favorite pastime sports to avoid that early game silicon mining. Because, you know, technically you have now all the tools together to get yourself a silicon mining site running. All you need are a couple of buildings, and you'll also require just a couple of turrets to fry the bugs that come there. And you just install those turrets into the buildings, and it's pretty much of an easy thing to do. But, well, this here kept us occupied as well. Good. So research is not happening when there's no place to research at. So we're going to take care of that. Get ourselves new dashbots. Building new robots is at this point of the game very, very important. My humble opinion, at least. And here we go. So we have now the solar cell buildings. And I have already made a blueprint for myself. It's called 2S Solar Farm. And it has 2 solar cells and 2 capacitors in there. So we're going to order one of these whenever this building here is finished. But as you see here, my factories are totally stressed out currently. So what we are going to order for ourselves now, in between all those other things, real quick, I want a fabricator. Because we are going to refine that silica sand. Because, you know, at this point of the game, I really want to get myself hands on a... What's it called again? Yeah, I want to get myself hands on that robotics production technology ASAP. You still need a steady income of that silica sand, but the twin bot you unlock is just so powerful, and, well, getting there as quick as possible is for me one of the more important things. In the meantime, we're expanding now our power production, and those things are looking out quite nicely. So, fabricator goes in here, and I also realized that by now I want to have another assembler for my command center, because I'm sick and tired of not being able to produce the stuff that I want there. So it always pays off to have a few copies spare. So with that blueprinting I've shown you a couple of minutes before, you can now set up your base to your own liking, and I really like this because you, well, can use that for smelters and all. But what I actually want to say here, what I really find important to note, is that don't overdo it too much in terms of preparation, because there's a lot of new models, new buildings and things, and gotta pick a picture before you go too crazy with too many different blueprints. But if it is something that you need to replicate often and regularly, it really pays off. So much for that. So, we got ourselves now the assembler in here. That's neat and all. And then we're going to set up some extra mining action here. These guys that I'm setting up right now will be my silica miners once I have an idea where I want to settle down the silicon mines. Up until then, it's also worth mentioning that there are trees standing around everywhere. These you can utilize for your silicon income as well. Pretty nifty thing. Also, one thing that I didn't mention at all yet is these ruins. I want to give them a moment of attention as well. But first, let me get that silicon production together. There we go. So this can now produce behind the scenes while we're doing this. So you see those yellow things on the map? These are all explorable sites. You right-click them, and if you didn't disable the mini games, you get to play a fancy nifty mini game here. You get some loot there, and now there's another thing where you will get extra loot if you put in a circuit board here, for example. So that is what we can do here. And yeah, as you see there, that wind turbine is actually quite a nifty piece of loot. We can now expand our power production with that. Isn't that nice? So that's pretty much the most things for today's episode. We're going to go next episode deeper into the whole silica mining department. So that's one really important thing to go for as well. But I really need to prepare that at first. What I really wanted to point out here is that it pays off to get yourself some of that silica sand to get at least that technology running already. You won't regret that, because what you got is what you got, and getting that research before you have the mining gives you the ability to go all in once you have the mining technology. Guess we will be mining over here, but probably not. These glitchy bots, they will infect your robots with a virus disease if you get too close. Well, I'll be looking at this in between this and the next episode. I haven't made up my mind yet how we're going to fix that for now. At this point, by the way, it is really open to your own liking how you want to expand. You can totally go crazy now with the metal production. I highly recommend you to spam a lot of power production. However you want to go for the power production, you have a lot of options. You can put solar cells secondary into those medium buildings, or however you want to put it down. I think I've given you all the tools you will require to have some good old fun with that. So we're staffing out these guys. This is going to be the Silicon Mining Brigade, and we are going to go over their adventures in the next episode, when I'm going to explain how to expand your base's power grid and how to secure yourselves your silica stuff. Alright, thanks for watching. I hope you appreciate the series. I really have a lot of fun doing this, and yeah, leave me your comments. Thumbs up would be really appreciated, and of course consider subscribing. Your help goes a long way, and it's a really cheap way of supporting this channel without paying a dime. That being said, have a great day. See you soon.